Listen in this video, The Unrevealed, Reality of the Global Economy, exploring the truth behind the numbers of money that's getting stolen from you day by day.
Listen, the bottom line is, the person who's dictating the economic and environmental agenda for the IMF, the World Bank, the United Nations, and for the most important nations and private corporations around the world was elected by nobody other than himself. Yes, that's correct. The person who is telling you that you are going to own nothing and be happy was never even publicly elected. So, who is this powerful and mysterious figure? Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Klaus Schwab. He's the World Economic Forum's founder and the current president and spokesperson for the organization, the only leader the forum has ever had. Now, going back to our timeline, fast forward to 1971. Schwab founded the World Economic Forum to fulfill his dream from moving from a shareholder capitalism model to a stakeholder capitalism model.
That we act all as stakeholders. The future is built by us.
Don't you just love it when a man with a German accent tells us how he's going to reshape our world? Now, what does stakeholder capitalism mean, you may ask? It's essentially moving away from profit-driven leadership to a model where companies answer first to special interests instead. This would mean that the people would have a say on the direction companies move to. You see, the problem with that is regular companies answer to their shareholders, who hold the company accountable to achieving certain financial goals. Now, when you move away from answering to shareholders and decide to answer to the people instead, you answer to virtually everyone. And answering to everyone is the exact same as answering to no one, which is a perfect position to be in. Why? Because you get to claim you're acting on everyone's interests without having to answer to anybody in practice. You become the king, appointed by no one. Coincidence or not, it all revolves around another big crisis that shaped the modern world as we know of it today. The Panic of 1907, the first financial crisis of the 20th century. And it was caused by the collapse of highly leveraged speculative investments propagated by easy money policies pursued by the US Treasury in the preceding years. And that ultimately led to a lot of bank runs in New York banks that were financing these risky investments. Now, if you don't know what a bank run is, it's essentially people desperately withdrawing their money from the banks, fearing that the bank would run out of money and they'd lose all of their funds they had deposited in there. The only problem is, the more people withdrawing money, the higher the risk of the bank running out of funds to cover the withdrawals. And in turn, that prompts even more people to withdraw money, leading to a self-destructive cycle that keeps draining the bank's reserves until they run out of money and default. I mean, it's like a snowball effect, and once it gets momentum, it is very hard to stop it. Now, why would that be a problem, you might ask? I mean, surely the bank has the cash everyone deposited in there to cover all of the withdrawals. No, my friend. You see, the bank doesn't just sit on the money you deposit. No, you see, it lends out almost all of it to make a profit on the interest rates. And that's how banks make money. So when a bank run happens, I mean, there's really only one way to stop it. Another institution stepping in and lending their own money to cover withdrawals. And that is exactly what happened in the Panic of 1907. And one man was able to save New York banking almost single-handedly. His name? J.P. Morgan. You see, J.P. Morgan bailed out the banks by putting his own money on the line. Now, why would he do that? Why would one of the most powerful men in the world put his own money on the line to save his competitors from defaulting? Well, there's two explanations. Number one is that, JP Morgan is very generous and deeply cared about his competitors to the point where he would risk his own bank to save others. How kind of him. Or option two is that he had an incentive for doing so. And my gut feeling tells me that option two is a little bit more likely. Now, why would he have an incentive for doing this? Well, here's how everything comes together, and you begin to see just how all the pieces fit together perfectly. You see, the whole Panic of 1907 led to a huge loss of confidence in the US Treasury, which is the organization that was supposed to ensure that problems like that wouldn't happen. So naturally, when they failed to do this, it became the impetus for Congress to begin a complete overhaul of the system. The following year, Senator Nelson Aldrich was appointed as the chairman of the National Monetary Commission, with the mission to form a commission to study the European financial system. What most people didn't know was that behind the scenes, Senator Aldrich had close ties to bankers. You see, he went on to spend almost 2 years in Europe writing recommendations and reports. And here's what happened. Upon his return, instead of handing out his reports straight to Congress, Aldrich decided to do something else. On the evening of November 22nd, 1910, Senator Aldrich left New Jersey on a train in complete secrecy alongside 6 other individuals who all dropped their names in favor of code names so no one would discover who they all were. And their destination? A private secluded island off the coast of Georgia. It was called Jekyll Island. And there, they stayed at a club, the Jekyll Island Club, which was co-owned by none other than JP Morgan, who arranged himself the entire facility just for this specific meeting. Now later, during my fact-checking research, I also found sources pointing out that the Rockefellers also co-owned this estate. And this meeting was so secretive, so concealed from government and public attention that nobody even knew was taking place. Now, who might be invited to attend such a secretive and important meeting? Now, more than a decade later, a list of the attendees of the secret meeting was actually leaked, and it was discovered that the attendees together represented about 1/4 of the world's wealth at the time. They were A.P. Andrews, who was the Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Treasury Department, Paul Warburg, who was actually a naturalized German representing Kuhn, Leob & Co., Frank A. Vanderlip, who was president of the National City Bank of New York, Henry P. Davison, who was the senior partner of JP Morgan Company, Charles D. Norton, who was the president of the Morgan-dominated First National Bank of New York, and Benjamin Strong, representing JP Morgan himself. It was basically a secret meeting of the top financiers and bankers of the US. And the excuse for such powerful representatives and wealth to meet together? To go on a duck hunting trip on Jekyll Island, of course. Only that duck that they were hunting was your money.